Welcome to iAccessVO with Brian Fischler and Ed Plumacher. Making it happen with VoiceOver accessibility. And now, here's Brian and Ed.
Welcome back to yet another episode of iAccessVO. Hard to believe it's November. Before we know it, Santa's going to be knocking at the door. What do you got going on over there, Ed? You getting ready for the holidays? Maybe Thanksgiving first?
Yeah, well, Thanksgiving's around the corner. We're getting ready for that. Just were discussing that earlier today. And I'm feeling the bite of that chill in the air in the morning when I'm standing on that train platform and the wind's blowing. So it's I can tell that we're moving from that fall to that nip of winter soon coming.
Yeah, no, it's fall seems to get shorter and shorter every year. You know, this year was about 10 days.
Yeah, that's because summer lasts forever. We go, it used to be when we were kids, it was called Indian summer. You're lucky if you got like a week or so in like late October, you might get some nice weather. Now it just stays nice almost into mid-November.
I'm sorry, but was that politically correct?
I don't know.
Hey, we are a PG podcast, so. But,
yeah, we're PG. We didn't say we were PC all the time.
That is very true. We are definitely not PC, but
yeah, get your letters and your acronyms right, my friend.
So, with everything that's been going on, we had the election season, a great World Series. Imagine you've been checking a lot of things on your iPhone. Have you noticed that your iPhone has been draining more and more?
Yeah, I didn't notice it as much as you said. I did in the beginning when I first downloaded iOS 10, and I attributed that to a couple of things. But I'll let you talk a bit, and then we'll get into what I thought my issue was, and maybe we'll come up with some solutions for people.
Yeah, no, we are here to help after all. But I noticed, as of iOS 10 and the iPhone 7, that my battery was some days it was like, I get up around noon. And, by 2 o'clock, 2 hours, my phone was from 100 to 70%. I hadn't even done anything on it. And then some days it was getting down to about 20% by 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And I was like, what's going on? But with me, I was very fortunate. It seemed to self-correct.
Yes, and that happened. When iOS first came out, the first iOS 10 dropped, what it was, when it was indexing everybody's phone, it was just really doing a lot of different things in the background. And I guess when they came out with the different double dot updates and extra, 10.1, 10.2, or wherever we are today, it really seemed to make a difference and improve a bit. But, there are some other culprits in here. And I noticed with me, the biggest culprit I had was the raise to wake feature, which was new for iOS 10. So once I deactivated that, my battery power was lasting back to what it was before iOS 10 dropped. Because the issue with that is that I keep my iPhone in my shirt pocket all the time. And it was constantly, unlocking. And then when it unlocks, the screen's on. And when the screen's on, it's burning up battery power.
You have to really stop bobbing for apples during the day so your head's getting closer to where the phone is. That was your issue.
Yeah, okay, Brian. I'm actually going to leave that one alone.
No, you weren't popping for apples and raised awake, okay. I can't stand this whole raised awake fee. I still don't get the point behind it. You still have to touch the screen to unlock your phone, so what's the point? I mean, it takes 2 seconds to, not even a millisecond to just hit the the power button or the home button, and the screen's awake. I mean, raised awake is one of those just absolutely useless features in my mind.
Right, and I guess if you don't pick up your phone that often, it's handy. But for someone who's going to be a power user or uses it constantly, this thing is like, this thing is just like duct tape to your head. So you usually don't have that issue. But if any listeners want to shut this off, they need to go into settings. And now with iOS 10, display and brightness has its own its own title there. So just scroll down underneath General and just keep going. And when you get to display and brightness, open that up and then go to raise to wake and toggle that off, and you won't have that issue anymore.
Yeah, I just realized I eat with my iPhone, I sleep with my iPhone. My iPhone knows more about me than anybody else. I'm thinking I might marry the thing.
Well, you might want to change and put the female voice on there then.
Good point. But hey, if I do marry it, I could just register at Amazon and the Apple Store and get all kinds of cool gadgets, man.
Oh, wait a minute. Was I PC right there?
I figured don't even interject on that subject,
There you go.
Yeah, yep. we just glossed over that real quick, but
so
you mentioned to me that you feel the screen curtain takes up some battery power there.
Yes, I do, and I've had this argument for some time now with people, and they're like, "No, you put the screen curtain on, it's not burning up the screen and the power." And it's like, yes, it is. When you put screen curtain on, it is generating a black image, and I am low vision, and I can see around the edges that there is light around the edges there. So there's light there, and it's generating a black image. And if it's generating an image, it's burning up power. So if you want to save battery power and you're low or no vision and you don't really use the screen as much, and I see a lot of low vision or blind people do this, they just put screen curtain on, leave it on. Just lower your brightness down. Just go into your display settings and put your brightness on 0 or 10% and leave it there. And that'll save you a lot more juice.
It's funny the way we segued there so fast. I thought when you said that you have arguments, I thought you were going to say with Siri about this. And I pictured you going back and, yes, it does, Siri. Yes, it does. Arguing that the screen curtain sucks. I'm
not going to infringe on your territory. You have the license to argue with Siri all the time.
Just before the show, I told it to turn on Do Not Disturb, and it says, "I do not understand. Do not deserve." I mean, come on, are you kidding me, Siri? It's aggravating. Yeah, I do use a screen curtain, and which I guess I am wasting battery power there because I have my brightness set to 0, and I have the screen curtain, which I guess those are both doing the same thing. So I might as well stop. Although what I do like with the screen curtain, whenever VoiceOver crashes, which seems to happen to me more than most people, I know it's a VoiceOver crash because then I'll hear VoiceOver say screen curtain on, and that tells me that there was a VoiceOver crash that occurred.
Why is that? Because your system rebooted?
It's like a quick little reboot. It probably happens in under 5-10 seconds, but anytime I hear that, like if I'm doing something on the phone, it's not responding, and all of a sudden I hear screen curtain on, I know that because the Mac does the same thing. When VoiceOver freezes up or something, and all of a sudden you hear screen curtain on, the VoiceOver on the Mac reset itself and everything. So it ran into an issue.
Right. Well, there's another culprit here too. It's the. You ever play with this, Brian? The background app refresh setting in general settings.
I think I did when it first came out, but no, I should probably look into it because me with my 277 apps.
Right, and what's happened is, say you went in there in iOS 6 or 7, and you went in there and you set your key apps the way you wanted them in background app refresh. iOS 10, they're all by default refreshing, so you have to go in there and reset them.
Have you turned some apps off to stop refreshing in the background?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, things that. Things like Facebook and Twitter and my social media, anything to do with GPS. I don't need that stuff running in the background. My core GPS app, I will. I do let Blind Square refresh in the background, but the rest of them I turn them all off, and this way they don't have to refresh unless I open them up and I'm using them. Yeah.
I might even play around with, before the next episode, turning things off completely in the background, auto-refreshing. See, just, for a few days, see how that affects battery life.
Yeah, and then if you also want to do that, too, another thing to do is go into your cellular, into the cellular data settings. in cellular, and you can play with that as well, because there are applications that are using and refreshing and retrieving data off of your cellular network in the background that you may not be aware of either. So it's always good to go in there and check those settings as well.
Yeah, or you can do what I do and just buy 5 different things that charge an iPhone, so you always have some kind of charge with you.
Well, but here's the issue with you. You don't need to worry about it because you're grandfathered into one of those legacy data plans where you have unlimited data.
Yeah, and I just read today how, starting next year, AT&T is going to throttle everybody. It's just they're trying to sell it as a good thing. There's no way that AT&T throttling your data in any way is a good thing for the consumer.
No, not at all. That means that data is valuable and we're slowing you down. So, yeah. But here's one for you. Here's a question I want to ask you if you're aware of this or not. Are you aware that your iPhone tracks everywhere you go and records and stores that information on your iPhone?
I am, and I like it because that way I'll always know where I was. I never get lost.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about we're talking about all your travel history, every place you ever go. It's there on your iPhone, and some people don't like that. I mean, I'm not a big fan of that either. So,
well, you're embarrassed because it shows how often you go to the Bongos Club.
Yeah, I don't even know where the Bongos Club is, but yeah. I'm sure you'll tell me if I ask.
You can ask Siri. Of course, it wouldn't understand me saying bongos.
Yeah, but so if you go in, this is pretty interesting, and people might want to take a look at this. So what you do is in settings, go into privacy, then go into location services. From there, go into system services, and if you scroll down, you'll find something you can open up called frequent locations. And if you open that up, you'll see where you've been, how many times you've been there, what dates and times you've been there. So you can turn that off, and that'll eliminate that. And then just below that, there's a clear history button, and you can just double tap on that and clear that history, and that'll be gone off your phone.
Yeah, well, how paranoid are you? Nobody cares where I've been. Now, can I go back to last Thursday and erase being with you?
Yeah, you could. Where were we? Oh, yeah, we were at Matt's Grill. I forgot.
Matt's Grill. Yeah. So, no. Does your wife check out your history of where you've been?
No.
Okay, Nash doesn't check out my history either.
Yeah, besides, that's why we have fingerprints on our phones.
Yeah, that's interesting. But have you ever noticed, by the way, that your phone gets really, really hot?
Only at the Bongo Club.
Hey, big boy.
Of course, I should have seen that one coming. But no, I notice this primarily when I'm using Downcast for some reason. And it doesn't happen all the time with Downcast. I think it could be because I'm subscribed to 100 podcasts, that maybe it has something to do with the amount of information being refreshed or something. But I notice sometimes that the phone gets unbelievably hot, and you're like, oh, wow, this thing feels like it's going to go all Samsung on me.
Yeah, well, the other thing is that you do, which a lot of people don't do with podcasts, is you actually stream all of your podcasts. Like me, I download my podcasts so I have them for when I can listen to them offline later. You stream everything live.
Well, no, most I'll download the really good ones, like the fantasy ones that I'm going to delete in a few days if I don't listen to. Certain podcasts like the great guys over at Blind Abilities, I download their shows. So shows I want to keep, I download. So it's not all everything, but when you're subscribed to 100 podcasts, like something like what a lot of the MacCast and those kind of things, when you might never even listen to those, and so those I just want streaming and everything. Yeah, no, but the reason I got a 64 gigabyte phone was primarily for Downcast.
I thought you had a 128 gigabyte phone.
I think I do now.
Yeah.
That was the old phone with 64 gigabytes.
Right, yeah, because I have the 64 gigabyte now, because that's as big as the SE comes with the memory size. But and that's fine for me.
Yeah, well, I never came within half of filling up the 64. You know, they either do 16, you know, in the old days, which was way too little, or 64, which is enough for most people. And now that I got, you know, I don't take any photos or anything, so you know, and it's just, you know, if you're not taking photos or I guess playing some of these more complex games and everything, you really don't need 128 gigabytes. Or I don't keep any of my music on my phone either. So
right. I will tell you though, you know, just before I switched over to the iPhone SE, my 4S was getting very, very hot when I was charging it, and then sometimes it would just get really hot when I was using it, and I was like, wow, this thing it was hot.
Going nuclear, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. And I actually had I do have a client that I was working with who had a 5C. And he says it actually like melted part of his phone. It got so hot, and I've heard that in a few instances. So you know, no burning up phones, no exploding phones, but there have been some heat and battery issues with some.
Did you say he had a 5C?
Yeah, 5C was.
So he was the one.
Yeah, that's the one that had the plastic back. No, I've heard a few people with the 5Cs have had some issues. No,
I meant I meant he was the only one who bought one. A 5C. I didn't think anybody bought a 5C, but
yeah, no, I know a few people that had them, you know, and you know, they I guess there were some really good deals at some point with either T-Mobile or Verizon, and it just made it affordable for some people to get it at that time. So, hey, you know the blind community. I mean, unemployment is a huge issue in our community, and you know. If that's what you can afford.
70% here in the United States and even higher in Canada, from what I've read.
I know.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's absolutely insane, you know, and there's so many talented people out there, and it's just, you know, it's just hard to break that barrier to get good jobs sometimes, you know. You have to work at it, so. Yeah.
And, you know, I thought we were getting to a point where, you know, I pretty much had all the technology I need. There wasn't really anything left for me to buy, you know, which is a good thing considering my income. But this article that came out today, I want one. And,
okay.
Have you seen this? Starting early in 2017, you're going to be able to buy a jetpack.
The only problem with that is I'm going to have to buy a really long cane.
Something tells me I may be over the weight limit for these things. I might have to get 2 to get me off the ground.
Well, you're gonna have to get 2 anyway, because you're gonna have to get 1 for Nash.
That's 3. Well, you could get them for the low price of $250,000. So $750. Okay, that's 3. And I hear a rumor that the Commission for the Blind may be buying these devices for some blind people.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now we have to start a myth and legend segment.
Well, hey, actually, let me rephrase that. Let me stand corrected. The article I read stated that the Commission for the Blind in New York may be buying these jetpacks for people. Only New York. So if you're not in New York, we're sorry. That was no. The Commission. For the Blind,
you know what? That would be awesome, Brian. That means we have Bookshare and jetpacks.
What do you think I'm going to be using while I'm flying on my jetpack? I'm going to be reading. I can't imagine at $250,000, you know, even a blind person. Well, I guess you could fly into, you know, like trees and stuff and airplanes, but I mean, how many people are going to be up there flying around and everything?
Well, the thought scares the hell out of me. I mean, I get nervous thinking about people having drones all over the place. Now I want like, you know, 200-pound men dropping out of the sky and landing on you. It's crazy.
It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's just another blind guy flying around. Hey, you know, what would you trust more? Yourself flying yourself in one of these jetpacks, or Google putting you in a self-driving car?
I want to keep my butt on the ground. I'd go for the car.
So you're sticking with Accessoride?
Well, no, I don't use Accessoride, but I'd stick with the car because some of these cars you get like a roll cage and put airbags around me, and I'll give it a shot. And they only go 25 miles an hour, and I'll stay off the highway.
How fast do you think those jetpacks go?
It doesn't matter how fast you go, but if you're coming down, it's 32 feet per second, then 64 feet per second, and 128 feet per second.
I'll tell you what.
Until you hit terminal velocity and you go splat.
I'll tell you what, listeners, if you're in the market for a jetpack, tweet us in if you plan to get one of these at $250K per jetpack, let us know. You can tweet us in at iAccessVO, or you can email us in and explain to us what you plan to do with your jetpack and more than 140 characters at iAccessVO@gmail.com.
Let me tell you something, Brian. If someone's going to drop $250,000 and buy one of those, give us a call, 732-660-8641.
Yeah, that's true. You got to call us if you're on the waiting list for one of these. Something a little more simpler than probably. We forgot to say that if you get one of these jetpacks, do let us know how the accessibility is behind it, because it's probably a touch screen that we won't be able to operate. Something, though, a little easier to operate, widgets, Ed.
Yeah, okay, good for you. Nice segue.
We had to get off that was just too good of a story to pass up. So, have you been playing around with widgets since iOS 10 changed everything?
Actually, I wasn't a big widget fan, and you've I spent some time on the phone with you earlier today, and I actually set up the widgets now for the lock screen, and I organize them in the proper order that I like, and I think I'll be using me some widgets now for my lock screen, just checking things out quickly and deleting the things I don't want.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. From the lock screen, if you haven't tried this with your phone locked, all you have to do is a 3-finger swipe from left to right, and that'll get you right into widgets. Obviously, now with iOS 10, your widgets are page 1, which still throws me all the time. I'm flicking through real fast. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm on page 3. Where are all my sports apps? And now that's page 4 because page 1 are your widgets. But they seem to be doing some better things with widgets. I like how you could use heading navigation to quickly flick down through different topics in your widgets. I really enjoy the CNN widget, ESPN, the Score, Team Stream, Google News. They'll all have a couple stories there that you could look at your top stories. And one thing I noticed was I have an upcoming flight, and it was just in an email, a mail message, and all of a sudden it appeared on my upcoming. I was shocked as hell.
Right. That's because your iPhone recognized the body, the text within the email as a calendar event, so it automatically did that for you. Yes.
Yeah. No, but I'm finding them more useful, and if you're new to widgets, quickly do a 3-finger flick up, and you'll get all the way to the bottom. There's an edit button, 1-finger double tap on that, and in there is where you can see all the apps on your phone that have widgets available. Don't go crazy and add them all, because I find the more you have in there, the slower the widget screen reacts.
Oh, I'm sure. But the other thing I want to tell you also, for anybody who's a novice or a newbie user, you mentioned using the headings to sort through that, and the way you do that is that you turn the rotor till you get to headings, and then you just have to flick up or down to scroll through the different headings within the lock screen.
Now, to do that, do you need to wait for Simon Says to turn the rotor, or no? You can just turn the rotor.
You can just turn the rotor whenever you want, and then just leave it there.
Okay.
Now the other thing I mentioned to you is when we started talking about how to get to all this stuff with that 3-finger, swiping from left to right or right to left, is I had somebody recently ask me about emojis, and I'm not a big emoji user. First of all, when you don't see them, they don't mean a lot to you, and I know that the phone is good about telling you what it is and describing it to you. My thing is, by the time I listen to all the emojis to figure out what they are to pick one, I could have typed 10 texts.
I'm old school, man. I hate emojis. I think they're stupid. But I'm not a 14-year-old girl, so hey. The other day I did send a text that I wrote 2 thumbs up, and I hate emojis. I was just writing 2 thumbs up, which I thought was kind of funny.
Well, what's funny about that is somebody might get it and think there's an emoji there if they can't see.
VoiceOver would read it, 2 thumbs up, exactly.
2 thumbs up, that's exactly right.
I was sending the text to a sighted person, though. Right.
So the person I was dealing with is has no vision, but he really liked to use emojis. So the issue he was having was he didn't know how to scroll through the different pages. So once he had gone to the emoji keyboard, just told them as long as you're focused on that, same thing. 3-finger flick left, 3-finger flick right will change the pages and open up. And when we did that, it was like there were 35 pages of emojis. I'm like,
oh, and I just read today Apple approved like 50 more emojis. I didn't know they needed to be approved.
Oh yeah, no, they are, they're going to retire some, and then they're adding some more. So, but there is one in there I think you'd like though, Brian. Remember, I think we spoke about this over the summer. They came out with the bacon emoji.
And to people like me that are old Scrooges, just so you know, if you want, you can turn emojis off. I believe it's under General, then Keyboards. You go right in there and you deselect the emoji keyboard. And you know what? It's nice because when you're touching to the bottom left of the keyboard, if you don't use it, it gets rid of that emoji keyboard button, and you just have the dictate button there. And it's kind of nice to get rid of that and everything. So there is a way.
Well, the funny thing is, I had done that in iOS 9, so I did not have the emoji keyboard on my phone anymore. But I guess when iOS 10 updated, it reappeared, and I haven't turned it off yet. So
it's like you're thinking about using an emoji, aren't you?
I actually did use one the other day. I used two beer glasses clicking.
I like that. That's not bad. Maybe, I've never played around with it. I just, like I said, I'm more a word man. I'm a word man, and emojis. I never understand what they mean. It's like 2 beers, bathroom. Okay, that makes sense. But no, I guess you got to think about it more than words and everything. I don't like to think too much. We've been over that, right?
Yes, and I think you're still getting counseling about that, right?
I am.
Okay,
it's going
good.
Very slowly, though. You have to be patient with me. But, we got an email question. Actually, it was a Facebook question. Somebody just happened to post, and I apologize that, if you don't check the person's name right away, you can never find anything again on Facebook. But somebody had asked us about what we were using as an RSS reader, and I used to be a big fan of RSS. I use Newsify. I believe it's a free app. There isn't a paid upgrade version. One of the things that annoyed me, though, it used to be great because they used to have, you could flick by headings from date to date, and then you could easily delete a lot of stuff that got too old or whatever. They got rid of the dates, and I just didn't like the layout anymore, and, but I still have a lot of my RSS feeds, although I've been deleting a lot of them because I'm starting to use Apple News a lot.
Yeah, no, Apple News is good. I have been using it. You've been talking about it for about a couple of months now, and I've been checking it out more and more and more. I did look at it. I have to be honest with you that with all the election stuff that was going on, I kind of got away from it because I just couldn't take it anymore.
What election?
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of steered clear of it for a while, but it is great for some tech news, and I think I'll start going back to it. And
and it's great because what I really enjoy, like I said, with the Newsify, sometimes it would drive me nuts. Sometimes you'd have to tap on the title of the article to get it to read. Sometimes the whole article was there and you didn't need to do anything. So it was very confusing. Not confusing, it was just annoying because you were never certain how much, deep into the article you had to go. What I do like about Apple News is you can find all the topics you want. They do need to improve the search functionality because if you type in blindness, you get pretty much next to nothing. You get color blindness, you get, or if you type in blind tech, you get anything with the word technology in it, and nothing there really has to do with technology for the blind. But, I found probably about 100 topics, and I really like using the favorites because, you know what you're looking for. The first tab is articles that it thinks you're going to be interested in. So if you just want to quickly see the news, you go to that tab. But if you want to just look at stuff due to certain topics, you just go into that favorites, and it's great. You have everything there in alphabetical order, and you can quickly go down it. And I find everything. Although one thing you and I both said is what is really lacking, it needs the reader to get rid of some of the clutter when you have to go a little further into the article.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest complaint I have about it is, I hate trying to read something and just have all that advertising in there, which is, that's why I love the reader button from Safari, because even if I see someone that posts an article on social media, when I open it up, I'll always go down to the bottom right-hand corner, hit the More button, and hit Open in Safari, because I know if it opens in Safari, I have a 95% chance the reader button is going to be available. I hit that, and I can get through that article quickly.
I actually have a few apps that have the reader built into it.
Really?
Yeah, I have a Yankee News app, and just one thing. I paid to get rid of ads for $2.99. Now I just quickly go through, one finger double tap, and it pulls the articles up in the reader. And I think that must be Apple opening things up, more. But it'd be nice to see the reader in more apps, and because people that are blind, you don't realize there's ads all over the place. Everywhere.
I wish they'd come up with something like that on the PC side. Give it to me in Mozilla Firefox or IE or even in Chrome. I'd be happy, because I tell you, I can't. The pop-ups. You can't read anything on the internet anymore on your computer, because it's just you're just inundated with ads and these things that pop up, and you can't get around them, and you scroll and you move, and it's moving with you, and it just drives me crazy.
I've got a solution for you.
Yeah, what's that?
Get a Mac, use Safari, and bam, you've got your reader.
I have a Mac. I live in both ecosystems, but primarily at home I use my PC.
Command Shift R pulls up the reader. Yeah, very nice function there. I always get annoyed with every now and then, and again, it's about 95% of the articles have the reader functionality, but every time you're hitting Command Shift R and you're not getting the reader, and you're like, I don't even bother with the article.
I know. I'd like to know what it is that makes it available. Is it something that the way they design their site, or the way that they post the article? Is there something they have to do?
That's a good question. Yeah. That's a good question. But
yeah, I'd like to know an answer for that. But you know what? I got some news for you, Brian.
What's that?
We have a really, really special guest coming up.
Really? Who can it be now?
Actually, he's a good friend of yours. He's been working with you for a very long time. Robert Klein has agreed to come on and speak to us about your great fundraising event, Laugh for Sight, and he's going to talk a little bit about technology, I think, for blind visually impaired. So what say we go have a little chat with Robert?
I'm looking forward to it.
Let's go.
Now we'd like to welcome in a very special guest. He made it from the Bronx to Broadway and probably pretty much to every major city in the United States. Legendary comedian Robert Klein. How are you doing today, Robert?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you, Brian, Ed? Nice to be with you.
I'm doing good, Robert.
I should tell your listeners that Brian's dad and I went to school together in the Bronx.
Full
disclosure. Yeah, full disclosure. Look at that.
Yes, and his grandfather was the Boy Scout leader.
Yeah, he was back in the day. But, Robert, we're having you on this show because you have been very generous. You started doing Laugh for Sight benefit here in New York City in 2005, and this will be your 10th year doing the benefit. When you did it the first time, did you think you'd still be doing it 10 years later?
No, but, the old ties bind, and it's a, very festive night, and when I know I'm in good company when about 20 members of the audience are dogs. Your own dog, Nash, as much as I like him, does not have the greatest sense of humor, but he's a terrific kid. No, it's a great evening, and we have a lot of people that have done it for a few years, and you always attract a good crowd, of comedians.
Yeah, well, thank you from the bottom of my and Ed's heart, because Ed also has retinitis pigmentosa, and so do a lot of our listeners.
Yeah.
Now, pretty much everybody, we've had 65 comedians donate their time, everybody from Jerry Seinfeld to Sarah Silverman to Louis Black to yourself. Why do you think comedians are so generous with their time?
Well, you're talking about really successful ones, right? So you got to give something back. And this has a particular nice ring to it. I think, the idea of making a blind person's life easier through research and dogs and all kinds of technological stuff. I know that's your scene. You know all the technology there is. I mean, it's amazing how into it you are, Brian. I mean, just, what can I tell you? It's a great cause. People say, look, this is an organization for the blind, retinitis pigmentosa, and how many guys are going to go, screw that, I don't care, really. Now, not everyone can make it, their schedules and all that, but you know what? You run a tight ship, Brian. It's a good evening. There's a lot of laughs.
Well, it wouldn't exist the way it does without you. And Ed, Robert told me when I was starting out in comedy, all comedians have a screw loose and something wrong with them. Everybody just knows what's wrong with me on the outside there.
I'm still learning what's wrong with him. I got to tell you, Robert.
Yeah, he does have a screw loose. He's got this wry sense of humor, Ed, and he mostly he's become. He's an administrator. The way he organizes it every year, and there it is, pops up again. There's two that I do without fail, and really because of friendships, I guess. But the other one is in the spring, Madeline Kahn, the memory of Madeline Kahn for ovarian cancer. I haven't missed one of those either. And they started even before yours. But let's not plug them. Let's stay with us.
That's tremendous that you still do her cause, and that's fantastic. I read that Ray Romano still does Peter Boyle's cause, and you like to hear that. I mean, that's just spectacular.
And I can't make it out there, but, he was my other very close friend. He and Madeline Kahn were, two of my oldest friends in show business. He had multiple myeloma, something for which they haven't found the cure, nor have they for ovarian cancer. Maybe if I don't do the thing one time, they'll find out how to prevent retinitis pigmentosa. I think I'm a jinx.
You're definitely not a jinx, but who knows?
I once told you this story, but when I was doing one of my albums, I wanted to make sure that it could be understood in a totally audio way. So I had a blind man that I knew, a friend. He's actually a sports guy, Eddie Lucas. And he listened to the cut of the album to make sure there was nothing he couldn't get. Because when we listen to an album or listen to the radio, we're all blind, right?
Yeah.
So it was an interesting thing because he could tell. What did you mean by that? Or what did you, there's certain kind of tone it had to have so that it could be enjoyed without seeing anything, without seeing the picture.
That's great that you did that.
Story, I admit, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because your humor, a lot of times, you're very physical up on the stage. Sometime I remember seeing you a lot of times when I was growing up, and you were just constantly moving and singing and just carrying on. It was awesome.
You're absolutely right. I still, even if you can't see me, I prowl that stage at the Gotham like a tiger. I walk back and forth, and I leave out the mime. Mimes are annoying to even sighted people, so.
That's true.
Although I know a couple of nice mimes.
They're also annoying to blind people because we don't know they're there.
Yeah.
I know, extremely annoying, but maybe that's the best way to see a mime, by him not being there. I once, in my talk show, 1985-86 on USA Network, I was on for 2 years. Eventually we were canceled. I was very proud to know that we were replaced by the real estate seminar, Dave Del Dotto cash flow method, in which Dave teaches you how the cash flows from your bank account directly to Dave's. It's sort of like Trump University, you know what I mean? So anyway, in my talk show, I can't remember why I started this. I'm very old,
That's okay.
Oh, you have to put up with this sort of thing. Oh, yes.
I put up with it with Ed.
How old are you, Ed? You're not that old.
I'm older than Brian. I'm somewhere in between you and Brian.
Oh, all right. That explains it.
Now, Robert, a lot of our listeners may not know this, but your mentor was Rodney Dangerfield. What were those early days on the road with Rodney like?
I first met Rodney in the fall of 1966 at the Improv, the only club of its time. At the time, the only club of its kind, on 44th and 9th in New York. And I was in my first Broadway show, Apple Tree, And I went down the street to the Improv to do a set, and the cast of my show came with me to give me moral support. And after the show, this guy comes up and says, I'll tell you, you were brilliant, all right? And I'm a tough customer when it comes to comedy, Now, I didn't know who he was. He was tugging at his collar and, I don't know, his sweat. The guy was... And we became very, very good friends. He was exactly 20 years older than I. I was with him constantly for 10 or 11 years. And I learned the basic things of comedy. There are no real... they're beginning to become courses in stand-up comedy. I don't know how good they are, but he was the best teacher of all. I had a pedigree at the Yale Drama School. I had been at Second City in Chicago doing improvising. But I learned simple things, how to hold the mic, to know your audience, who's there, what kind of ethnic groups, what kind of age groups. He wrote all his own jokes then. Let me do one of his... He had jokes then, before he became a superstar, which were worthy of Art Buchwald or great humorists that wrote for the Washington Post or the Times. He said, I'll tell you, our parks are unsafe, our streets are unsafe, our schools are unsafe, but under our arms we have complete protection. It's a sociological statement, or I'll tell you, I played some tough clubs, Aldo's, formerly Vinny's, formerly Frederico's, formerly Nunzio's. I'll tell you that Nunzio's, that was a tough club. You went into Nunzio's, you went down 2 steps, physically and socially. He was amazing. He was depressed. He was super, kind of fidgety person, chronically depressed, and yet elated by, what made him happy? Comedy. He had he became a superstar, but he could never truly be happy. And that's the sad part of his life, but he was amazing. His bright red tie is one of them, is in the Smithsonian. He's quoted a lot. In the Times, you might see, this bill of Congress is the Rodney Dangerfield of all bills. It gets no respect. So he really made a tremendous impact on the American psyche. He really did.
I had listened...
meet him, Brian?
What's that? I never got to meet him. No. I got into comedy at a time where Rodney passed away shortly after when I was starting out, and Carlin and Pryor. So those were a few guys that I did not get to meet, unfortunately.
Lucky you got me now.
Yeah.
Who knows? They're dropping like flies. Joan Rivers.
Unbelievable. I did interview Joan. Yes.
Yeah. I knew her for 40 years. I just didn't like some of the cruelty. You know what I mean? Like, she did a joke about deaf people, and some guy said in the audience, said, my child is deaf. Oh, grow up, Or doing stroke talk between Dick Clark and Kirk Douglas. That to me is cruel. And I didn't like that part of her. But on the other hand, she was a trooper for many years. And she worked hard, and I'll tell you the truth, it's very sad that she died, but you could do worse than be 82 and have your career sizzling, and you sit in this chair and you pass out, and you never come back. You died happy.
That's the way I want to go.
Yeah, I know. It has nothing to do with it. There's no curse or anything like that. But Pryor and George, of course, could have taken a little better care of themselves. Ed, you're not in show business, huh?
No. Other than the podcast I did with Brian, that's the extent of my show business.
Is it confidential what you do? Well, you're in technology, right?
Yes. I'm an instructor at the Lighthouse Guild in New York City. Yes.
Yeah, I have an apartment around the corner.
Oh, good. We'll be over next week for lunch.
Why not? That's good. This guy, Brian, is amazing on that. Of course, I'm going to be 75, and I came late to technology, but I would imagine for a blind person, it's like indispensable, right?
Oh, it is. There's
I texted Brian this afternoon. I got an immediate answer. in actual plain English, better than he talked.
Well, that's the amazing part in and of itself, is that it came back in plain English.
Yeah, well, I wrote to somebody today, thumbs up, sorry, I don't use emojis. I hate them. But hey, our listeners know about tech from Ed and me. What I want to let them know about is, tell them about the first time you met Richard Pryor.
I was at the Improv, and it was probably a few months after I first went there, maybe early '67. And he was adorable. He dressed with light-colored sweaters like anyone for tennis, kind of white pants, and he was not at all profane. He was just hilarious. And by the way, I give him a pass more than others. Not that it's my privilege to do so. I'm very much opposed to the overuse of profanity among comedians. As a substitute for wit. Pryor was brought up in a really rough situation, literally in a brothel, and he knew pretty rough characters. So I met him first. He was doing the Merv Griffin show. He was on fairly frequently, and he was absolutely adorable. He was hilarious and cute. And that's not how you think of him afterwards.
I've never heard anybody call Richard Pryor cute before.
And he sort of disappeared in '68 and '69. Now, if you recall, your listeners who are old enough, '68 was a difficult year in America with the assassinations of Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy.
Yep, I'm old enough to remember that.
Yes.
I wasn't born yet.
Riots, in mostly in African American neighborhoods. And it was a fermenting year, and he disappeared, and he came back a much more authentic Richard Pryor, not a political one, but just more authentic. He felt more comfortable in his skin, and the guy had tremendous talent, and some of his stuff really made me laugh, and he was very sweet, and unfortunately, he had a fight with his girlfriend in front of the Improv on 44th Street, and he smacked her across the face. A little blood on her lip, and it really turned me off. And I said, hey, man, I'm a middle-class dude from the Bronx. I love you, but I can't. The next day, he apologized, and everything was cool, and he went with her for a long time. He did have this little violent tendency. I remember on my honeymoon, I got married in Atlanta. The next day, I did a show called The Midnight Special. Ed, you might remember that.
Is that with Red?
Musical show, different guests each week. I was on with the Gladys Knight and the Pips were the hosts, and I did a turn. I went out, drove out Sunset Boulevard with my new bride. I make a right turn on the Pacific Coast Highway, and there's Richard Pryor sitting in the shotgun seat of a Porsche with a guy that looked like an accountant driving. And I hunk him, and he gives me that cute look, pull over, And he made me come to his house, so my honeymoon was delayed by drugs and alcohol for about an hour and a half.
I wish I would have been around in the '60s.
Well, my wife, maybe not. A few people fell through the cracks. Thank God I was among them. But he was such a sweet guy and a tremendous talent, and had a pretty terrible end because the last time I was with him, Comedy Awards, he was really completely immobile, couldn't move, couldn't talk, and that's pretty nasty, So
yeah,
George was just not hale. Carlin had heart problems, and he was married to his work. He was working. He never got tired of it. When he finished an HBO special, he was starting on the next one already. Every time I did one, I did the first one ever, and I did 9 of them. I would take 4 or 5 years in between, develop a new repertoire and all that. He loved his work, and let's face it, he was pretty good. He was a funny guy. I thought he was very dark at the end, talking frivolously about suicide and blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't crazy about that, but I don't know. It's, show business is a very all-encompassing thing. When you're in the middle of it, it takes a lot of your passion and time. And as I've gotten older now, I still work. I just did 5 shows in the last couple of weeks in the West Coast and here. But I'm really happy to have a less of a schedule and just tone it down a little and not worry that I didn't get that part in the movie and that part. Because I think, and I had enough of that. But it's been a great business.
It's amazing to me, now that I'm thinking about it, how many comedians have kind of such a dark ending. It's a little scary in that way. Speaking of dark endings, Robin Williams, I never got to ask you, did you know Robin well?
Of course, yeah. Terrible. I was really shocked because when I heard he went back into rehab, I said, oh, not again at this age, the third wife, and, practically had grandchildren. And no, he went back to he was worried that he might have drugs. And there were no drugs or alcohol in his body when he died. His depression must have been so overwhelming. Robin was a really sweet person. He was very unusual. He was a brilliant talent. He certainly was heavily influenced by Jonathan Winters, who's one of my idols.
Someone else who also suffered from depression.
He did. In fact, Jonathan himself, I spoke at his memorial. Jonathan told me himself that he was in an institution in the East Coast here for about 9 months, and he got out. And the day he got out, he got a telephone call. His wife answered the phone from Stanley Kramer, the director, saying, I'm doing a comedy movie, a spectacular movie called Mad, Mad World. It's a mad, 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 mad world. And there's a great part for you. And he was terrified. He took it, and that set him off again. You know what? There is a correlation that is anecdotal between depression and comedians, even mild depression. I've never known Seinfeld to be that way. And look, I'm counting the ones that are not depressed.
Well, I hate to draw the correlation here, Robert, but we run with that in the blind community.
I was thinking the same exact thing.
Yeah, depression's one of the things that really paralyzes a lot of those that try to get their lives back in order when they're faced with degenerative eye disease or they face blindness for the first time. And some people are able to come through it. And, they're pitted with all that depression, and a lot of them turns to anger and then grief and then fear and frustration. And it's a roller coaster ride. And I see a lot of the comedians that you've spoken about in some of the interviews I've heard that you've done. There's a lot of correlation there.
Well, there's a good reason that someone would be depressed if they have the misfortune to have degenerative eye disease. There's a lot of people have wonderful lives and just as depressed. That's the question.
Right.
I know that in my case, I wasn't deeply depressed except a terrible divorce. I mean, I had a crooked lawyer, for crying out loud. I mean, $300 an hour, and that was 25, 30 years ago. And he smelled money, and he charged for hello when you got on the phone. You could hear a test timer go off. And the thing that really pissed me off is he stutters. So it took about $1,500 just to say hello for this guy. There is correlation that is anecdotal between talent, in fact, extreme talent, and one could say lunacy and or depression. Beethoven, on the other hand, Beethoven's deafness and his temperament and all that may have been as a result of lead poisoning. I read a wonderful article. These two Beethoven fanatics in California, each owns a lock of his hair, which is bona fide. One of his students cut his hair in his deathbed, and it was loaded with arsenic.
Ooh.
Mm.
And his drinking glasses, well, lead rather. The drinking glasses were full of lead, and it loosened and all that. But what do people do? Say in the blind community, does medication ever help, or counseling, or both?
Well, you hear a lot of it. You hear about the counseling support groups are very popular, and we always encourage everyone to seek out support groups in their areas. They join various organizations. I mean, the thing is to stay engaged, and that's one of the things that we promote. And the other thing is the technology that Brian and I offer. I mean, the training we do allows people to recapture their lives, and it allows them to integrate back into a sighted society and hopefully into an integrated workforce. The thing is, people want to go to work. They want to stay engaged. They want to work. They want to lead fulfilling lives. They want to feel they have a sense of purpose. And technology is a great way to do that. And socializing is the other great way to make that happen.
Yeah, no, it is.
I was reading the other day, my absolute favorite is Johann Sebastian Bach of the classics. He was blind the last few years of his life. In fact, he dictated one of his greatest works to his son-in-law. But I didn't know that he had this surgery. Can you imagine in the 1740s?
Can't imagine what that was.
It was so horrible. Infections and obviously no result at all. Just how primitive it was then. And them thinking, who knows what his condition actually was. Through the ages, it would be difficult to ascertain it. But, for him, it was like a bump in the road because his head was entirely music. In a sense, Beethoven's deafness was a much larger curse because he was a musician,
Well, you were
very sad. Let's get back.
Yeah,
shall we?
More positive. You were on the short list to replace Johnny Carson. What was the golden age of late night talk television like?
Well, I think Johnny was as good as there ever was. Cavett was great in his day, but his was different. He wasn't the comedian that Johnny was, the talent. And Johnny was spectacular with a child or with a little old lady. And he was America's darling. I did a comedy concert in his hometown. It was a big comedy festival. And he's a hero in that town in Nebraska. He gave $20 million for a wing of the hospital, and his house is still there, and people go to see it and all that. I think he was the best. But you know something? I did have a talk show in 1985-86 on USA Network, and I that's not the kind of thing I liked, with these guys or women coming on promoting their thing. You have to talk about what they their project. You may not have seen it or may not have liked it. So I was talked about because I guest hosted for Johnny Carson about 15 times, and I don't know if I would have accepted the job. I know how big it was, but I made a lot of decisions that prevented me from thrusting to the top. I mean, I do have a life, too, and I want to work every day and promoting everyone's stuff. I don't think I was ever really the number one consideration, but all the rumors and TV Guide and the newspapers had me among the finalists, and I was flattered. But I'm not entirely sure that I would have actually done it. However, I owe so much of my career to those talk shows and for Carson because, I mean, I'm sure he wasn't a terrific husband. He had he had four marriages. But he was so giving to young comedians. When you did your homework and you prepared to go on that show, sometimes only he and the band understood what I was saying. You understand? These people were pride out in the sun waiting online to get in, and they had the studio at about 60 degrees, and it was America. And I didn't want to talk past people, but he was so supportive. So I would say that he was the golden age, even more than Parr, because Parr was more like a gossip, and although he's the one that first presented Jonathan Winters, and then Johnny showed him a lot too. That was when a guest like him was on, it was a must. The other one is Lenny Bruce. I never actually saw him perform in person, nor did I see Johnny perform in person, but Jonathan Winters, I mean. But he was really groundbreaking, and he was crucified in a very real sense, because stuff he said would be perfectly innocent now. And he was pushing the envelope, and he was a social commentator, and he was very, very funny, and he suffered. He couldn't get work because you say a dirty word and you'd be arrested, or he once made a joke about the Pope in Chicago, and 2 Chicago detectives came up and handcuffed him. So everything is because of the pioneers like him. And George Carlin helped with his 7 words. I mean, I'm not crazy about all the profanity, but it made it to the Supreme Court, and that's a proud thing for George. And WBAI, who had the courage to play that cut. So I think things are better now, but I just wish there'd be a little more, I don't know, maybe a little more class. I don't know. I'm an old fogey.
Well, what would Robert Klein's advice be to somebody who's looking to start out in comedy today?
Well, there's lots of places. My son Ali has decided, after working in the nonprofit for years, to go into comedy. He's been doing it a little over a year. I think he's doing great. In fact, we're going to see him on Laughs for
I've
Sight.
seen him. He's fantastic.
He's really getting good. He's got to work, but he's doing great. You know what? There's a lot of places to get started now. There were no places to get started when I did, except the Improv. And Bud Friedman, who owned the Improv, really preferred seasoned performers. Like Lily Tomlin would try stuff out. She wasn't a superstar yet, nor was Pryor. But also Liza Minnelli would come by and do a song. He'd put people on, like who worked there as a waitress and stuff like that. But now there are all kinds of places. You can bring your family. They have to pay a minimum, or you can, pay $5 and get up in front of a mic. There are certain courses, people teaching it. I don't know how good they are. But a lot of people, the whole thing is now an entity. A kid can say, I want to be a stand-up comic. No one said that when I was a kid. It's a profession now. Years ago, I was offered a fellowship at Yale, a number of years after I left the graduate school there, to teach stand-up, to go up twice a week and form a political cabaret club and all that. And I didn't want to. I was hot. I was making money. I was, I didn't want to go up. It was prestigious, but I didn't want to go up for a few thou, on the New Haven Railroad twice a week to New Haven. I was happy to get out of there after my Saturday class. But it's a whole different thing now. It's a category. I even heard things like the comedy community when I did the festival up in Montreal, or the comedy industry. I mean, it struck me as so funny, but it is. It's both.
Well, 50 years in comedy, from the Bronx to Broadway to HBO to Carson to iAccessVO. What were some of the favorite moments of your career?
Oh, I got to say, performing at the White House, which I did more than once. And the first one was President Carter. Lucy Arnaz and I and Marvin Hamlisch performed songs from They're Playing Our Song, which was a Broadway musical we did, on the White House lawn. My parents were there, sitting at the table with President Carter and his wife. We got a standing ovation. President Carter jumped up on the stage to see what a standing ovation looked like. He hadn't gotten one in a long time. I performed a play called The White House, at the White House for President Clinton, with Bette Midler and Lolita Davidovich and Morgan Freeman. Or was it Morgan Fairchild? I get them confused. Morgan Freeman. And, that was also, I performed at Ford's Theater for President and Mrs. Reagan. I never liked Mrs. Reagan. I always thought she was imperious and, fancy pants and all that.
I thought you were going to say Lincoln's Theater, and you performed for Lincoln.
Almost. It was the same theater, gorgeous theater. And, looking at that balcony, I'll tell you, that's where he was shot.
Yeah.
It was done. It was beautiful. But I never liked her, And then she was laughing so hard at me, he couldn't hear. So he had a big smile that it never left, but I knew he wasn't getting it. But after the show, she comes backstage and says, "You were so brilliant." I said, "I love you." I love that Just Say No campaign. You're fabulous. You're wonderful. I became a slight whore, in my ideas. She actually said that, they were old show business people. She really did get my things. How do I change my feeling? I never used to like Paul Anka. I thought he was, I don't know, Paul Anka. So I did a date with my accompanist, Bob Stein, and in Las Vegas, and he produced it. And we were opening the next day in Atlantic City. He said, come on, I have to be in Atlantic City tomorrow. I'll fly you in my plane. So we had a little Learjet. And what do you think? He gave Bob Stein, my accompanist, the best seat. It's a tiny little plane. Doesn't have a toilet or anything. Gave him the best seat, that kind of the best of Arab hospitality. You know what I mean? So I had to change my opinion of him. Damn it.
Well, Robert, this has been an absolute treat. Ed, you have any other questions?
No, I'm just... Yes, sir.
Speak up, Ed. Let's go.
I'm here. I've been trying to get a word in edgewise every now and then, but
I know.
you comedians start talking, it's like, okay.
No. I'm sorry.
I was thinking I had to be a heckler to get in on my own show.
Ed, that's the answer, technology. That's really an exciting thing, and all the things to come, too,
yes,
that they're working on.
Absolutely.
To improve the lives of blind people and everybody. I believe in technology. It's doing a grand job.
And I got to say, Robert, we appreciate all the help that you've given Brian over the years, because his foundation has raised tens and thousands, actually probably hundreds of thousands of dollars now for research to help fight blind diseases and things like that. So it's, I know I'm very appreciative of all the work you've done and all the effort you put into this.
Well, it's my pleasure. It's a great cause. I think, I want to be metaphorical in your work and your attitude and also raising this money and doing these technological chores and getting stuff done and discovering new stuff. You see a lot more than people who see. So,
and we want to thank you for
angle, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, we want to thank you too for putting us in good company. You've been on Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, Late Night with David Letterman, Merv Griffin, Dinah Shore, and now you're on iAccessVO with Brian Fischler and Ed Plumacher.
I think that's great. So we'll see you on December 5th, right?
That's right.
Sir.
Come out on, if you're in the New York City area, come out on Monday, December 5th, Gotham Comedy Club to see legendary comedian Robert Klein, Joy Behar, Jessica Curson, Ali Klein, Daryl Wright, Stacy Pressman, host Maria Melito from Q104.3, myself with, of course, Nash, and you can get tickets at www.gothamcomedyclub.com, www.laughforsight.com, or by calling 212-367-9000. Well, Robert, this was an absolute treat for both Ed and myself.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Really have enjoyed it. It went by very quickly. So we'll get together on the 5th.
You're listening to Brian and Ed on iAccessVO.
Wow, that was absolute treat, Ed, to have legendary comedian Robert Klein on this show. And, it's interesting, the correlation to make between comedians and the blind community with depression. I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah, no, and it was great. It was great to speak to Robert. I mean, he's a staple in New York. He's a staple in the neighborhood where I work. I mean, I know people who they see him walking around Central Park West there a lot, and he's a quintessential New Yorker.
I got to tell a funny, quick Robert story. A couple years ago, after Laugh for Sight, Robert and I were standing outside at the bar next door to Gotham, and somebody freaks out and goes, "Oh my God, Robert Klein, I love you. Can I get a photo?" I step out of the way. The guy takes his photo with Robert. The guy leaves. I said to Robert, "That's got to get old." And he says, "No, not really." So, hey, you enjoy it. But, you always have to keep an eye out for things, And this was a story that caught me off guard. Beware of fake holiday shopping apps appearing in the App Store, Ed.
Yeah, you sent this to me, and it kind of, the first thing is you always hear how Apple vets everything, all the apps that go out there. But what they're vetting is they're making sure that the code is clean, that, people aren't writing things that will take over your phone or look into things they're not supposed to be looking into. But I guess if someone's putting a shopping app together, all Apple's going to do is go validate the fact that it's a valid URL, maybe check to see if there's some certificates. But what goes on behind the scene, whether people are sending them money and getting goods delivered or not, they're not going to know.
Yeah, maybe they need to get the people that make sure that the podcasts are legit checking the apps, because we know you had to go through a couple times there the first time getting everything approved. And but no, the example the article gave, I believe, was Overstock.com. And I believe they have an app. I've heard of Overstock.com, and I guess somebody came out with an Overstuffed. And people just weren't paying attention. And I thought this was important to discuss, because with VoiceOver, sometimes we have it set so fast that you don't necessarily hear everything. Just use your brains, use your head. Make sure that you are using the exact app you want to, because what they were saying, in 9 out of 10 cases with this, it was just something that was spamming you with ads. But in that 1% chance you're not paying attention, you enter your credit card, your name, and somebody's stealing your identity instead of you getting that big wheel for Christmas.
So Overstuffed.com is what you're saying.
I don't remember what the exact one. It was a very similar title to Overstock.com. I don't remember what it was exactly, but
yeah, because I thought you told me Overstuffed.com is where you order your food from now that Grubhub's no longer accessible.
I'm still Grubhub is still accessible. It just takes 3 days to order your food because they refuse to build a heading navigation back into it for us VoiceOver users, and that's right, Grubhub, you're really disappointing me.
Yeah, well, there's a whole lot going on in the news about Grubhub, which I don't even want to get into now.
Okay, you'll have to let me know about that off air, because
no, it's been in the news since the election.
They're not like spitting
we'll talk about it offline.
They're not spitting in my food, are they?
No. They don't handle your food, so you're safe. So, okay. But one of my favorite apps is for purchasing, and I know it's good, and I know it's a valid place to get merchandise from, is Amazon, and that is a great accessible app, and I can order something new from my iPhone. I can go back and reorder something I've ordered in the past, and it works well.
Yeah, make sure not to use Amagon, because that would be an example of a phishing app. So, no, Amazon, I'm a Prime. I'm loving my Amazon, and I even had to get a we went pretty far into the show to get what's pissing off Brian, but we did not want to disappoint. And right now it wasn't something technological, but my building for some reason decides that it's in the 40s outside, but we don't need to use heat, so I had to buy a little space heater. And obviously when you're blind, anytime you're buying a product that you've never used, it's the question, am I going to be able to use it? So I had sent the link to a family member, and they looked to make sure, was it a touch screen, how many dials? But we know a lot of you probably live in a cold environment and might need a little extra heat, and this thing is awesome. I mean, it was $23 US, Lasco ceramic space heater with adjustable thermostat. It's like the second result that comes up if you search for space heaters, and it's very easy to use. It just has 2 dials on it. The first, which adjusts different heat settings, and then you have the dial that adjusts the thermostat and everything. And I'll tell you what, I've had to turn this thing off a few times because it gets a little too hot. But big fan of the product if you're looking for a little extra heat this winter.
Wow, awesome. That's at least it helps you out. Everything works well for you, and you can get it all done. So
yeah, but it's another thing I have to have turned off when we're recording the podcast, so I'm shivering in here.
Yeah, that's why you can't run your air conditioning in the summer when we record the podcast for the same reason.
It's just can't seem to get the temperature right.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though. There's, there is a company that I've been using for a while now, for about a year and a half, and it's Harry's.com, and I buy my razor blades from them, and I bought razors and some shaving goods and stuff from there, and at Harry's.com, it's something I was able to order online and everything, and then when I went to reorder some blades this time, I noticed that they now have their own app. So I downloaded the app, and it was such an easy process to order the merchandise. And then when I was ready to pay, I just put my thumbprint down on the phone, and it went right through Apple Pay, which I already had set up. And 4 days later, I had my stuff in my mailbox. It was great.
4 days. Give me Amazon in 2.
Yeah, well, I'm not a Prime member for them,
yeah.
but it is free shipping as well, so I'm not going to complain.
And you're using those to shave your legs, right?
No, not quite.
Oh, your face. Oh, okay. I was thinking your legs.
Yeah. Patrick is the one who was the swimmer.
I knew it was somebody with the podcast that shaved his legs. I just couldn't remember if it was you or Patrick. Full disclosure, Patrick was a diver, so we know they're weird. But, oh, God, never piss off the editor. Sorry, Patrick. But, no, I have a beard, so... no razors for me, but that's great though. That's really great that the app's very accessible, and I've heard great things about the product. I know several people that do use Harry's, and I've heard nothing but good things about them.
Mm-hmm. No, it's good stuff. I've been very happy with it, and because I just tear myself up shaving, and these have 5 blades in them. It's smooth, it just glides, and it just works really well. So I'm not going to complain, and the fact that it's accessible and easy to use. Works for me.
Now I'm picturing my first boss and his shaving experience.
What's that?
My first boss was the guy in the bathroom in Airplane 2 that was shaving. Craig Berenson. Do you remember that?
Yeah, but why? Oh, when you worked in LA.
Yeah, that was my first boss. He was the guy in the bathroom in Airplane 2. He's also the guy in the original Airplane when they go to Robert Stack's house to pick him up when the dog attacks him.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
So it was hard to take him seriously when he was yelling at me because I'd think of him shaving in Airplane 2. But he liked to yell a lot. But, Craig, if you're out there, I love you, man. But, no, so podcasting, Ed, that's what we do here.
Really?
Yeah. I just, for the people that weren't aware. And, you told me something that really surprised me, that most of our listeners listen to us through the Victor Reader stream, which was quite surprising. But after that, it's Downcast, and is it Overcast or Undercast or Outcast?
It's Overcast, yeah. So the people, as far as using a podcast application, I was surprised to see the Victor Reader stream listed there, and then right next to it is Downcast, and then a few downloads below that is Overcast. But it's that's for people who subscribe to the podcast. We usually do it that way. So, and I think we've had some questions on Facebook recently about how to subscribe to the podcast.
Yeah, no, we get asked that a lot on Facebook, which some people, I guess they're not like me and they're living in the podcast world, but depending on your podcast player of choice, at least in Downcast, I could quickly walk you through how to do that. At the bottom of Downcast, you have your 3 tabs. You have your podcast, your playlist, and ad. You just simply go to the ad tab at the top. You have a search field. You would one finger double tap on that search field, type in iAccessVO, because I guarantee if you dictate it, it is not coming out right.
That is right, and you have to spell it correctly. IACCESS, V as in Victor, O as in Oscar, iAccessVO.
Bottom right of the screen, the search button, one finger double tap. You'll then have, hopefully, our podcast come up, iAccessVO, and I believe you would just flick to the right, and there's... Actually, I think you need to open it. You do a one-finger double tap on it, then you flick to the right. There's a subscribe button.
And then double tap.
Yep. And then you won't have to do anything. We'll just appear every 2 weeks in your podcast, Downcast podcast player. If you're using Overcast, it's a similar way. I don't know the exact where the buttons are and everything because I don't use it.
And most of our listeners who are new to it will probably use the native podcast app, Podcasts, which comes with the iPhone or the iPad or the iPod Touch, and from there it's the same thing. You just open up the podcast app, and you have 5 tabs on the bottom. and it's unplayed, my podcast, featured, top charts, and in the bottom right again is the search tab. Touch that, double tap, open it up, and then the search field is at the top of the screen. Type in iAccessVO, hit search on the keyboard, it comes up. Now when you flick to the right, you'll get the episodes listed. The most recent episode is on top. Just open that up, and then same thing. You flick to the right several times until you find the subscribe button and double tap on that, and you'll be subscribing to our show.
Yeah, and in the Victor Reader stream, I definitely don't know the steps. You do, once you go into the podcast player, though, all you have to do is enable the search feature in there, which I'm sure if you're using a Victor Reader stream, you know how to do, and then you can just type us in on the number pad as iAccessVO.
Yes, and you have to use the old T9 data entry method where, the 2 key is A, B, C, and then 2, and you have to hit it as many times as you have to hit the letters. The way we used to have to type in the old flip phones. So,
Hey, some people still prefer that typing method.
You know why? Because they did it for years and they're good at it. It's I was surprised when I got my first Victor and I was working with it, and I was like, I remembered how to do it, and I was pretty fast at it because I was accessing the one thing about the Victor, which is pretty cool, it's a great little device, is I ended up putting Bard Mobile on there. I have my NFB Newsline account on there now. I have my podcasts on there. I download Word.docx files on there, and it'll read them to me. So it's a pretty robust note taker and accessible device.
Yeah, you gotta next gen. You gotta have Bluetooth. It's the only thing.
Yes, that is my biggest complaint about that item. Is that there's no reason in 2016 going into 2017 that we don't have Bluetooth on. Humanware hasn't put Bluetooth on the Victor Reader stream.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be coming, but that's one of the things that always throws me there is Bluetooth, and I'm also surprised thinking about it that the iPhone does not, and maybe it does, and I'm just not aware. You think they'd offer you a keyboard where you could type like you type on the old number phones?
Why would you do that? Some
people that don't know the layout of the keyboard, it might be easier for them to type that way.
Well, they have devices like that. You have you have these little credit card sized like Mobi type keyboards.
Yeah, but I'm talking about an on-screen command, a keyboard that would. They might even have it in the App Store, and I might not be aware of it because I know.
I see what you're saying. The number pad where you could use it like that.
Where you could type that one.
Yeah, that may exist. Who knows? I'm not sure. So, it's all good stuff, and people want to subscribe to the show, and if you can, email us at iAccessVO@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter at iAccessVO, and visit our new Facebook page, iAccessVO on Facebook. I think we just started that page, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, Brian? I think we're up to almost 200 members already.
Yeah, no, it's growing nicely, and thank you very much if you've already liked us and joined us on Facebook. We appreciate the love because, we're not just takers, we're givers too, and we need a little scratch behind the ear every now and then. But
okay, Nash.
Wait, was I just describing how dogs need love?
Yeah, pretty much. But speaking of dogs, why don't you talk about your event coming up, which also benefits a lot of different things and dogs.
Yeah, I was debating, should I plug it at the end? I guess we'll plug it, because we did talk about it a lot with Robert, but in case you skipped over the interview, Laugh for Sight, if you're in the New York City metro area, coming up on Monday, December 5th. It's Laugh for Sight and Dogs with legendary comedian Robert Klein, Joy Behar, Jessica Curson, who just got a very nice shout-out by Robert De Niro on the Jimmy Kimmel Show, along with Allie Klein, Stacey Pressman, Daryl Wright, Sean Eli, and, of course, Nash and myself. Silent auction with once-in-a-lifetime bucket list vacation packages, as well as a special needs dog adoption and comedy show. Evening will start at 7 p.m. For tickets, you can go to GothamComedyClub.com, LaughForSight.com, or call 212-367-9000. It's hard to believe the next time we're recording, the show will be on only a few days. So hard to believe this is our last show before Thanksgiving. I guess we'll be out the The day after Thanksgiving, if you want to sit on the couch, we should be having an episode coming to you later that night.
Yes, and I think we're going to have a guest from I think halfway around the world. So we'll announce that when we get a little closer.
We had to get somebody that wasn't celebrating Thanksgiving.
That's correct.
So, but hey, we're not here for the holiday. We work through holidays, so we don't let them slow us down. But what number, Ed? I don't even. What is this? 29? Is this 29?
This is 29, episode 29.
Our little baby's all grown up, as Vince Vaughn would say.
There you go.
You're grown up, and I guess we are out.
You have been listening to iAccessVO. If you'd like to contact us with ideas and suggestions for future podcasts, please email us at iAccessVO@gmail.com or visit our website at www.accessquest.org.
Laugh for Sight and Dogs. Tickets are now on sale for this year's Laugh for Sight and Dogs on Monday, December 5th. At the world-famous Gotham Comedy Club. This year's benefit is a unique partnership between Laugh for Sight and the Mayor's Alliance for New York City Animals. This year's show will feature legendary comedian Robert Klein, Joy Behar from The View, Jessica Kirson, recently seen on CBS's Kevin Can Wait, along with all-star comedians Daryl Wright, Stacey Pressman, Sean Eli, Allie Klein, and Brian Fischler with his guide dog Nash. This year's benefit will be hosted by Q104.3's Maria Melito. The evening will kick off at 7 p.m. with a very special silent auction presented by AmFund with once-in-a-lifetime unique bucket list vacation packages, along with paintings of cats and dogs. There will also be a very special doggy adoption for special needs dogs. Tickets can be purchased by going to www.gothamcomedyclub.com, www.laughforsight.com, or by calling 212-367-9000. Won't you come out for two very special causes that everybody can get behind? Curing blindness and saving dogs. Everybody's a winner. Don't miss out.